everyone! Welcome to Friday Fun. Today we are talking about decomposers. That's a really big word. Let's talk about what does that mean? Well, let's think. You know how trees lose their leaves and they fall on the ground, or sometimes an animal dies? What happens to those leaves, or what happens to that animal when it's out in the wild spaces? If we found a dead animal around our home, we would clean it up. But in the nature has its own cleanup crew, and they're called decomposers. What they do is they eat dead stuff into little tiny bits, and it becomes part of the soil, and it becomes really important to give nutrients to the plants that are growing next. So let me show you some of the decomposers that we have. One of the main ones that we have are fungus or mushrooms. And mushrooms can grow in a lot of different ways. And during the wet time, they'll grow coming right out of the ground, but they will find a dead tree and they will start eating the tree and growing on what's left of the dead tree. And if Miss Susan can turn around, you can see some of these are called shelf mushrooms because they make little shelves. There's some shelf mushrooms growing on this dead tree. Look at these. These are so cool. They're kind of hard and I don't want to break it because it's really pretty. But it's a little bit soft and squishy. This is a really big mushroom, and this is a really dead tree. This dead tree is located right off the main path in the preserve, and we're gonna leave it here. Even when it falls down, we're gonna leave it here. There's some other fungus mixed with algae that are also working on this dead tree, and they're called lichen. And some lichens look like little plants, and some lichens look like little algae kind of growing on here. And there's some more fungus on this dead tree. Look at these little mushrooms up here. These ones are small shelf mushrooms, and they are slowly but surely eating away this tree. So one day, I'm not sure how many years it'll take, but one day this tree will all be back and into the earth. So those are the mushrooms. Those are one kind of decomposer. Also, there's some bacteria that are even smaller that can help decompose things. And there's different kind of mushrooms too. Very, very, very important to eat away the dead material so that it doesn't pile up. Can you imagine that if every animal that ever died in the preserve was still laying there? That would be awful to know. What happens to a dead animal? Let's say it got sick or it got injured and it died. Maybe if it was a big animal, maybe another animal might eat it, like a red-tailed hawk, or who else eats dead animals? Possums do. But then they won't eat it all, and then the ants will come in and the ants will start eating it. Some of the decomposers are insects and other bugs, and the ants will be covering things, and maybe you've seen this. Maybe you've seen something that has died and is covered with ants. It could be something small like a little insect, or it could be something bigger. Let's see what I have to show you today. So the first thing happens is, let's say a piece of fruit lands on the ground and it starts to dry out. And it's just the beginning. The molds and the fungus and the mushrooms and the ants will all start to come and eat it away. Here's the ants. They have attacked this, and I'm not even sure what it is. But they're sure eating it, and they will bite little bites and bring them back to the nest to share with everyone else, so that this little piece of something on the ground will totally go away. There's some other kind of decomposers that work primarily on leaves, like leaves that fall from trees or leaves that fall from plants. So if we have some what we call leaf litter, like if you throw trash on the ground, we call it litter, but these are leaves, and they're just all over, and they're piled up. And if the tree kept making leaves and they kept piling up forever, the tree would end up burying itself, and that won't work. So there's a lot of bugs that help in the leaf litter. So at my house, this is what the leaf litter looks like. You can see there's some whole leaves, there's some part leaves that have been eaten, And there's some leaves that you can really see how the bugs have eaten part of it through, leaving only the veins. It's very pretty, isn't it? These probably were roly-polies or pill bugs that did this kind of leaf eating. Or maybe they were decomposing snails. Decomposing snails are different than the snails that we see that eat our fresh garden. These guys are a flat shell. See how they have a circle, but it's kind of flat? And these guys eat dead leaves. See his little head sticking out? He's coming out. His little eyeballs are on top of each of his tentacles on his head. Looking around. Doesn't like to be in the sun. He's looking for a dark place. They like to live deep in the leaf litter where they can eat the dead leaves. I'm going to give him a treat. I'm going to put him in the leaf litter. He is going to be really, really happy to be home again. There he is on the little log. If you notice, that little piece of wood has a lot of chew marks on it. Something else happened to that wood. It could have been some kind of insect like termites. Termites are really good decomposers. And I have a picture of termites. This is what termites look like when they live under the ground. They're called subterranean, meaning under the ground. You can see this guy. He has big jaws in the front. This one is a soldier. He protects the termite nest. And these other guys are just regular workers, and they're just eating. And then they're taking care of the queen, they're taking care of the babies and all that stuff. So eventually, if not already, this dead tree that we are under might have termites in it. I didn't look carefully, but when we find termites, we find little droppings that show that they're in there. So termites eat dead wood. So what else do we find in our leaf litter? Well, I did tell you that we'll find roly-polies, or we call them pill bugs. Oops, he fell over. And they have 14 legs, and they can roll up into a ball. Come on. Oh, you're just being handled too much. You're not going to roll for me. And they actually breathe through gills, so they need to be in the moist leaf litter because they get the moisture. Whoops. Dropped him on the dry ground. I better put him into the leaf litter because he will not be happy on the dry ground. He needs to be moister. What else do we have in the leaf litter? Oh, we have more things. I just have to find them. Okay. One thing I want to show you. Well, here's one that rolled up. You guys have seen a roly-poly that rolls into a ball. Oh, he opened. It's like, let me go in that leaf litter. I would much prefer to be in the damp area. I did have a couple of, let me see if I can find them. There were some earwigs. I hope they didn't escape. These are what we call pincher bugs. Where are they? I didn't put too much stuff in here so I could try to find things later, but I don't know if they were able to escape. Oh, here's one of my millipedes. Look here, I found the millipede. He had climbed into the wood, and when I broke it open, there he is. He's smaller. Let me see if I can get him in my hand. Okay, there he is. That's what the millipede looks like. And they have so many legs. Look at him move. He can curl up or he can straighten out. Millipedes are so fun. And they don't bite or anything, so you can handle them, just like roly-polies. They sort of look like a snake moving, but it's actually a lot of little legs under there. Now, different from a millipede, and I'm going to put the millipede into the leaf litter, well, he will be very, very happy, is a centipede. And here's a big centipede in the bottom, and they're pretty speedy. Let me see if I can get him in the sun. See, he has a lot of legs too, but these legs are longer, and he has the ability to sting. He's got some venom, so I'm not going to handle him because I don't want to get that would hurt. and leave a nice mark, and then it would bother me for many days. So with the centipede, which looks different than the millipede, this one we don't want to hold. And sometimes they look red like this one does. I'm going to crawl on my stick, maybe. Crawl on my stick. I found him under a flower pot. They like it nice and dark. Whoops. I also noticed that I found some little shells of the roly-polies. And if you find little roly-poly shells that are white like this, and you find half of the body, that means that they've molted. That means they've taken off their shell and grew a new one. And when they grow the new one, they always take off half the shell. The back half comes off first, and then the front half comes off maybe the next day, and they grow a new shell, which is really fun to find those. The last thing I wanted to show you is a spider. And I had to put him in a separate container because he could climb up the edges of the plastic container. Where is he? There he is. So this one is called a Sow Bug Killer Spider. Now a Sow Bug Killer Spider can chomp right into the shell of a roly-poly or a sow bug. They have such strong jaws, they can actually eat them. So sometimes if you find an empty roly-poly shell, an empty pill bug shell, then you will know if it's the whole shell, it wasn't a molt. That meant it died. And maybe, just maybe, the Sow Bug Killer Spider got it. This one is a littler one. They can get twice this size. Maybe I have a picture of the Sow Bug Killer Spider. Oh, maybe I don't. I must have added it to my spider collection. Well, I do want to show you something else that's kind of messy. And a lot of things happen when you're out in the wild, and one of those things that happens is poop. And it could be bird poop, it could be raccoon poop, it could be coyote poop, it could be possum poop, it could be dog and cat poop, all these kind of poops. Do we want the poop piling up? Of course not. So we have other decomposers that actually will eat poop too. And I know that one will eat bird poop is the cockroach. Cockroaches will actually eat bird poop. That's the craziest thing. And some beetles, they'll lay their eggs in poop, or some flies. Have you ever seen a fly flying around the poop? They lay their eggs in there, and when the baby hatches, it doesn't look like a fly. It looks kind of like a wormy larva, and that will eat the poop. So we need our decomposers. They're kind of like the trash men. This is the green fruit beetle, and maybe you've seen these. These are big, and they have bzzz. When they fly, they are very, very noisy. You can usually find them. And their underneath flying wings are black, but their outer shell is this bright green. So when they're a beetle like this, they're eating fruits. And when they lay their eggs in composting material like the leaf litter or other compost where it's starting to decay, and the babies, these little grubs, eat all that decaying matter and make it even better for the soil. So if you ever find a beetle grub, if it's a big one, it might be the fruit beetle. So the couple of things that I couldn't find that I caught earlier were the pincher bugs or the earwigs. You've probably seen these. And they kind of look dangerous, but these little pinchers don't pinch very hard. They don't hurt. And then we talked about snails. We showed you the kind, and this kind of snail comes out at night with no shell, and the slug usually eats the green leaves, but sometimes, I know with my one magnolia tree, the big flower blossoms land on the ground, and the slug will eat those as they land on the ground. Another one that I have in my garden, and I saw them jumping all over, but sometimes they're very, very tiny, are called springtails. And they kind of just pop and jump and pop all over the place, but they're also in there eating in the leaf litter, eating the old dead leaves. And then this picture shows you clearly the difference between our centipede and our millipede. You can see all the tiny little legs in the millipede, and it looks very, very round, and the legs kind of are hiding underneath the body. But in the centipede, it doesn't have quite so many legs, and they all stick out to the sides, so you can really tell the difference. And we saw our centipede, and That was pretty big, and it looked like this one on top. Okay, so today's story is called Under One Rock, Bugs, Slugs, and Other Uggs. Because when you're looking for decomposers, they like it where it's dark and where it's moist. So a lot of times if you lift up a rock or a brick or a flower pot, you can find them. Here is a field for insects to play in, and acres of shades for turtles to lay in, and with windbrush trees for birds to nest in, and sun-splashed spaces for lizards to rest in. This is where, on this summer day, there lay a rock, all rough and gray. Well, actually, there's 2 rocks. Maybe 3. This is the rock. See, there's a little web underneath. See a little spider web? The rough gray rock was discovered by chance by a brown-skinned boy in ragged pants, a curious lad who wondered aloud what could be hiding in the red, rich ground. He lifted the rock all rough and gray that he saw in the field that summer's day, and there he found some varied creatures, a village of animals with special features. I bet you know what this one is. There's an earthworm coming out, going back down into the ground. His hiding place has been discovered. These are earthworms, all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground. Below the big rock, all rough and gray, that hides the whole crowd on a summer's day. They need to stay in the dark and they need to stay moist, so under the rock is a perfect place. This is the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants. Neighbors to earthworms, all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground. Below the big rock, all rough and gray, that hides the whole crowd on a summer's day. There's the ant nest under the ground. Sometimes if you lift up a rock, you'll find an ant nest. This is a spider with her 8-eyed face, who builds a home in this cool, dark place. A home near an army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants. Neighbors to earthworms, all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground. Below the big rock, all rough and gray, hides a whole crowd on this summer's day. That looks like a wolf spider. This is the beetle, all shiny and black, with grooves running down both sides of his back. A friend of the spider with her 8-eyed face. They live side by side in this cool, dark place. A home near the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants. Neighbors to earthworms, all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground. Below the big rock, all rough and gray, that hides the whole crowd on a summer's day. Some tiny field crickets who sing with their feet search near the rock for some seeds they can eat. They live with the beetle, all shiny and black, with grooves running down both sides of his back. A friend of the spider with 8-eyed face. They live side by side in this cool, dark place. A home near the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants. Neighbors to earthworms, all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground. Below the big rock, all rough and gray, that hides the whole crowd on a summer's day. A soul millipede with sensitive feel slips through the dirt in a search of a meal. He plows by the crickets who sing with their feet. and search near the rocks for some seeds they can eat. They live with the beetle, all shiny and black, with grooves running down both sides of his back. He's a friend of the spider with her 8-eyed face. They live side by side in this cool, dark place, a home near the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants, neighbors to earthworms, all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground. Below the big rock, all rough and gray, that hides the whole crowd on a summer's day. These 6 tiny slugs, all covered with slime, creep over the soil, eating most of the time. Past one millipede with a sensitive feel, who slips through the dirt in search of a meal, and plows past the crickets who sing with their feet and search near the rock for some seeds they can eat. They live with the beetle, all shiny and black, with grooves running down both sides of his back. He's a friend of the spider with her 8-eyed face. They live side by side in this cool, dark place, a home near the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants, neighbors to earthworms, all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground. Below the big rock, all rough and gray, that hides the whole crowd on a summer's day. The creatures and critters live together as one, beneath the gray rock away from the sun, a collection of neighbors, the large and the small, and a place where they live is home to them all. Oh, and that was the end. So that's a fun story, huh? Maybe you can look under a flower pot or under a rock at your house. So how are we doing for time, Miss Susan?
Well, I don't know. We're getting close. This is about 13 minutes. I don't know how long the first one was.
Well, let's see if I missed any pictures. I did miss a couple things. Let's talk about the wood. So when the branches of a tree die and fall to the ground, different kind of things go in there. We talked about termites. We talked about the fungus or mushrooms, but there's more. There's beetles that actually will make holes in the wood, and they will lay their eggs in those holes, and their baby larvae will eat the wood until it's completely gone. It'll take a long time. They'll work side by side with the termites, and that branch will eventually disappear into the soil and give more nutrients to the soil. So here we are on the preserve today. It's a nice day. Everything is looking very, very dry. Miss Susan, would you like to look around a little bit? We can see things are looking very, very dry. All the plants are waiting for the rain to come. It is looking kind of dry now. Lots of seeds still happening. Plenty of birds to eat those seeds, and animals. We're just hoping for the rain to come back to fill the marsh once again, so that the ducks and the geese will return, and everyone else. So right now they're just heading down to the sump to get a drink, because there's no drinks available here. So I'm going to close up the meeting for now, and that was the lesson on the decomposers.